Good morning and welcome all to this session on digital transformation in the new normal. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy. Uh, so just a quick introduction about myself. I'm Kalyan Krishnamurthy, digital process excellence consultant with over 25 years of experience, having worked in manufacturing, IT, and services, transformed many of the SSCs in the last 2 decades, have worked with large organizations like Alstom, Hewlett Packard, Standard Chartered, back office, chat services, and a few more companies. So I welcome you all again. So let's get this context and prelude right before we jump into the entire discussion. So as we all know, this pandemic has turned the world upside down with a significant impact to the businesses, to the people, to the institutions, to the nations as a globe overall. Now, we were looking for techniques to optimize and transform the way we run our business with various tools and methodologies like lean, agility, and so on and so forth. But this pandemic has really taught us something new. I mean, while we've been discussing, but we didn't realize the importance of that. That's resilience. The immediate and quick reaction to emergency situations to any level. And that's a very critical lesson being taught by this pandemic to all of us, actually. I mean, we have now moved on from just in time to just in case. And that's where we are actually. And we are seeing this entire environment and the situation to be highly volatile, uncertain, complex, and as well ambiguous. We call it as a VUCA situation. Now, in this VUCA situation, how do we quickly stabilize, transform ourselves, make ourselves competitive, in the whole the way we run the business actually, and that's exactly the critical question in all our minds actually, and that's where we are going to have this discussion all about. Specifically focusing on shared services. Shared services has emerged and matured in the last 2 decades, right from a simple mere cost arbitrage type of an initiative to hub and spoke, aided with the digital interventions and various other initiatives have come in. And adding to that is today, there is a lot of geopolitical happenings around the world in terms of what is this pandemic is really teaching us, even not just the businesses, but the nations as well. Now, the SSC can look at this as an opportunity or a problem. So that's also a point of discussion for us today. So we have a excellent panel of experts with varied experience from different industries. Actually, I'll introduce them in a while, actually. But one thing I can tell you, this panel of experts is a very balanced composition. The reason being that actually we have a finance perspective, we have an operations perspective, we have a technology perspective, and of course, a very important one, the customer perspective as well. And that's where this panel of experts has been quite balanced, and we'll have as many questions as possible and make this very optimal within this 1 hour. So let me introduce you to the panel of experts one by one, actually. So that's Mr. Thompson P. Gnanam, the Chief Digital Business Officer from Conneqt. He has over 27 years of experience managing P&L, sales, marketing, business, digital transformation, outsourcing management. Has a very good global experience actually in enabling clients, leading them to various efficiencies, business efficiencies of very high order through transformations as well. He is also co-authored the Hewlett Packard Global Business Service BPO operating model. He's worked with multiple organizations, very large organizations like Hewlett Packard, Vodafone, Exaware, and Lebara. Welcome, Thompson.
Thank you, Kalyan.
The next on the panel that we have is Mr. Abhijit Gajendragadkar. He's a senior director from UZ Strategy. He's got over 35 years of experience in business strategy, formulation, and implementation, large-scale transformations, corporate finance, financial planning, product profitability, valuations, internal controls, you name anything on the finance domain, he's an expert to go for. He has also dealt with enterprise risk management. He's worked with very large organizations like Accenture, Tata Motors, and Voltas. Welcome, Abhijit.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Next we have on the panel is Mr. Shankar Rajesh, who's a senior director from UZ Strategy. Has got over 25 years of experience in the manufacturing and the service domain. Has executed cases on the ground, actually in the areas of strategy, operations, and has advised clients in various domains like life sciences, medical technology, agribusiness, and food. So welcome, Shankar.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be on board today.
The next we have on the panel is Mr. Bhaskar Leon Baker. He is a practice head from Digital Conneqt Solutions, Business Solutions. He has got over 25 years of experience in the services industry with 20 years in core consulting and shared services domain. Actually, he has led multiple teams in globally diverse operation environments, especially for shared services. He's been in finance, accounting, operations, and HR shared services, customer lifecycle, practice building. He's worked with large organizations like Reliance, HCL, C3I, V Customer, Mercer, and many more actually. And welcome, Leon.
Thank you, Kalyan. Delighted to be a part of the panel.
Yeah. I'm not able to see Santosh video actually. I would like to introduce Santosh actually. In a moment, he'll be up on the video actually. Santosh actually, yeah, just so long. So Mr. Santosh Nayak is there on your screen actually. Welcome Santosh. Actually, he is a country head digital sales for Conneqt. He has got over 25 years of experience in software technology and various BPO companies. He has implemented a lot of strategies, especially in penetration to new markets, launching new products. He's got a wide experience. He is going to bring in more of a customer perspective as well. He's he's been proudly associated with the Indian Air Force. His initial career has been with Indian Air Force. He's worked with large organizations like HCL, Cross Domain, EBIX. Welcome, Santosh.
Hi, Kalyan. Good morning, Kalyan, and good morning, everybody. Glad to be here.
So let's start off this discussion with a big picture question, and let's begin this especially from a CFO perspective, finance perspective. And I would like to ask this question especially to Abhijit, who comes with a in-depth experience, especially in this domain. Now, Abhijit, we would like to know actually from your perspective, what are the big challenges, especially with this pandemic and the ensuing new normal? What are the challenges locally within India and in the global arena actually that CFOs face today actually?
I think every CFO would have seen that the pandemic and the ensuing new normal has led to a change in every dimension of the CFO's function. Whether it is around fund, liquidity, cash, operations, financial planning, scenario building, I think every aspect of the job has been significantly impacted due to the pandemic, which is still raging. As far as operations is concerned, the old paradigms of cost, timeliness, and simplification are being revisited. In terms of cost, it is both the cost of the company as well as the costs of running the finance function. When it comes to cost of running the company, there are new ways that CFO needs to find to really look at how one can achieve a scale reduction in cost. And that means that the idea of a shared service, which in many companies was or still is around finance, accounting, and some of the support functions, how can that idea move to other functions within the organization which are mainstream around sales, purchasing, say order processing, and so on and so forth. Costs of the finance function are also something that one has to look at. So what was an acceptable norm just a few weeks or a few months back is no longer acceptable. And which means every CFO has to think of a different scale of shared service and the ways in which that scale can be achieved. I think companies which have, in a way, done the first wave of shared service or the first two waves of shared service would suddenly find that this configuration of shared service is inadequate in the current scenario, because the demand for cost reduction of a new cost or for reconfiguring the business has gone up manyfold, which means you have to rethink of the way you want to configure shared services in every dimension, whether it is location, processes, IT, digitization, and so on and so forth. The other big trend, which is, of course, which has been there for some time, but which is accelerated because of the pandemic, is really the thrust on simplification. Today, every recipient of information wants information in a simple form. And primarily, I think the experience of using consumer apps on mobile phones and other digital devices has actually spurred this. So if the experience of using the consumer apps is so much better, I think users are demanding a similar level of simplification and a similar level of integration across the company's application, which sometimes doesn't exist or exist in bits and parts, and that means that a combination of a lot of digitization, a lot of system integration needs to be brought into play to bring that about. The third, of course, along with simplification, is timeliness. I mean, obviously, it's no longer enough to have even information on financials. I mean, I'm talking of a lag indicator like the financials of a company. It's no longer enough for it to be available on the third or fourth day or on the second day. I think today that time cycles are shortened to literally few hours. The demand is that how can we, even in complex companies with complex operations, with multiple plants, how can we generate the information in the shortest possible time and have information both financial and non-financial across the value chain, which cuts across various application systems and maybe cuts across various stakeholders. So these are so from an operation standpoint, and there are many other aspects of a CFO role that are impacted, but from an operation standpoint, the old paradigms of timeliness, cost, and simplification are being questioned, and CFOs have a very short window to react to this. Back to you, Kalyan.
Beautiful, Abhijit. I mean, so timeliness, simplification, reconfigure in all the ways that we can do. Thank you, Abhijit, for that. So that follows up with another question on the finance perspective, and I would like Shankar to respond to this question. So basically, we've seen in the last 2 decades, actually, the way the CFO function has been evolved, right from a simple reporting to a controlling function. And today, it's seen as more of a value-adding. It's a very, very critical function today, even to run the business actually from the core of it. And the CFO is looked up to be as a future CEOs in many of the domains, as you would see. Many of us would have seen that. So, Shankar, your views on how does this CFO function or a CFO transform himself or herself, from the way that they've been functioning pre-COVID and during this pandemic and in the ensuing normal? What are your views, please, actually?
Sure. Thanks for that question. Puts into perspective some of the trends that we have been seeing in our consulting practice. So we do a lot of work with clients on delivering their strategies for them and helping them implement their strategies. And what I've seen across the last 25 years or so is that, that role has long transformed from controllership to being not only just value added, but being drivers in many cases. So, for example, they are no longer a recipient of a business strategy anymore. They co-create the business strategy with us. Oftentimes, when you're looking at a corporate strategy, for example, they are the ones who lead the buying process because they are balancing, priorities, deciding on capital allocations, and so on. So that role has changed significantly and dramatically, and it's just gone beyond the controllership, and we see that as an active participant. Whether it is strategy or whether it is supply chain, we see that immersion of the CFO role going to be pretty deep. I'd like to put in some factors out here which we have seen, which can kind of throw some perspectives. One of the things that we are seeing is that the average age of the CFO has got younger and younger, which is very good. So so that's one. What it means, of course, is that the window of experience that somebody would have to deal with a crisis like a pandemic doesn't exist. I mean, let's accept it. None of us ever saw a pandemic like this, or even our parents didn't see it. So it's unique in that sense. So CFOs are getting younger. The other aspect is that the tenures are also shortening. I mean, you're talking of not just because of attrition, but also because in many large organizations, they move from one role to another as part of their overall role management and role migration program. So what's happening with the reduced tenure is that you have very limited time to make those changes that you really want. And if you balance that with CEO tenures coming lower than that, the CFO actually plays the intergenerational guide between the previous leadership and the new leadership. And that becomes quite a challenging place to be in, and how do you kind of add value in that sense? The third that we have seen is, especially in, let's say, organizations which are large, but just beginning to professionalize and so on, CFOs who come in there are dealing with a lot of legacy issues. So how do I set right a legacy? And that legacy could be anything. It could be an ERP which has not been implemented well, or reporting standards changed, compliance issues have come up. How do you manage legacy and legacy decisions as you kind of take the strategy of the company forward? And you put all these three major, youth, tenure, legacy, and then you add speed, which is becoming extremely critical in this. So it kind of becomes quite a challenging proposition. Speed either to respond to a problem, and I would say speed to respond to an opportunity also. I mean, if there is a good acquisition target, can you transform your organization to work like a private equity investor? Accelerate their entire buyout process and ensure that an acquisition is made during these chains. So both speed for opportunity as well as problems, that becomes the other challenge. So I would say that, that role has long transformed, but these 4 or 5 factors would be very critical to kind of looking at that role and moving that role as it kind of evolves post-pandemic, where I think every role would have evolved.
Thank you, Shankar. Excellent. Actually, I mean, CFO is a co-creator along with the business CEO to build the business, run the business, grow the business. Excellent, actually, and that's actually, this role is becoming very, very critical. Thank you, Shankar, for that. So so that's on the finance perspective. Now let's look at how does the technology come into picture here. I mean, let's take a stand back and then look at what is a way that the technology is going to help this CFO function, and is there a big change in the way that we have been dealing with these kind of activities with technology pre-COVID and post-COVID and the new normal? So the next question is all about, actually, I mean, how do we see, I mean, is technology helping actually, and is it how it has changed the way the CFO functions actually? If so, what, and all those. And let's quickly listen to Thompson, who comes from a digital business perspective, to understand the effects of technology pre-COVID, post-COVID, and then ensuing normal as well, actually, new normal. Over to you, Thompson.
Thank you, Kalyan. Good morning, everybody. I think a very interesting question as well. I'll try and probably answer this in 2 parts. One is, how is technology transforming the finance function, and who's the new digital finance leader? And then you also asked about data. Probably I'll try and separate these 2 and try and answer this question. So I think today, as we are in the midst of this, COVID pandemic, which has fundamentally reset all business models, it's kind of set new normals. What it also has done is it's accelerated digital adoption. I think that's a very, very key change we have seen, and it's also very interesting for us also to see from a digital business perspective, how the life cycles have shortened and how we are able to quickly see customers adopt and adapt this, very quickly. And a lot of CFOs, if you look at it, the core focus in the first part of the year, I think we've been struggling with the pandemic for almost 6 months, has been, they've been focused on trying to use technology to see how to quickly stabilize the business, safeguard liquidity, and then also try and build strategic objectives for the future, because this has been the key, deliverables for most of the CFOs as they've been battling this in every businesses. But now from a reactive mode, and the world is getting used to this new normal, and global economy is also, it's starting to recalibrate. The game has totally changed. So, and the CFOs are also, I'm seeing very quickly, accelerating their adoption. During the first 6 months, the way I looked at it, probably the focus was to look at accelerate inbound cash flows. Can I look at some quick systems, technologies, innovations to do that, to keep my cash flows controlled by spends? But now slowly everyone is kind of recalibrating themselves and trying to see how to kind of prepare for this new way forward. That's where I see the CFO as the new digital leader, because that's a norm, the way I look at it. And maybe I will try and explain what makes a digital finance leader from a technology perspective. One of the very important parts is to reevaluate legacy finance processes, to transform, to drive efficiency, implement intelligence process automation at scale, because we need to continuously automate transaction-based processes and focus on judgment-based, and cognitive processes. Have a clear view also what data holds value to the organization. This is very important for a CFO to really focus on what doesn't add value, or what data makes value for the organization, and also drive improved decision making and performance management. So on the question of technology, which are now driving or fueling this change, right from AI, from robotic process automation, advanced analytics, and machine learning, are now become the key catalyst, for this unprecedented change which is happening, and all of us have to quickly adapt this. And the important point is also probably I will also maybe call upon some frameworks. Let's say, for example, talk about technology leaders such as Oracle, and they call agile digital finance. So what is agile digital finance? It's Oracle says that this is built on 3 pillars. One is operational excellence. So how do I incorporate intelligent technologies like AI, ML, and blockchain in my processes? Digital intelligence, building the analytical skills and personal capabilities, needed to run processes efficiently. And business influence, this is a very important point for us CFOs today. So how do we free up our talent and resources from mundane rule-based work to start focusing on more digital disruption and influence digital strategy? I think that's a very important point. It was operational excellence, digital intelligence, and business influence. So this is typically what would define the modern agile digital finance leader. So that's the first part of the question, Kalyan. Maybe then I'll quickly touch upon the data part of it, because it's a very interesting part as well, in terms of data. And I also feel the CFO function and the CFOs are best suited to leverage the power of data, because data sciences is business sciences, And if I look at data in terms of the 4 V's of data, volume, variety, velocity, and veracity, I think the the CFOs are the best leaders to understand this, in terms of using data to inform, to drive more informed, enhanced decision making. I think that's a very, very powerful capability which the CFOs could leverage. And from an overall data sciences perspective, also, like the CFOs could now use data sciences to drive better data definitions, data standards, because of their understanding of data itself. The success of various data sciences models become more effective, and also if they could also integrate this with other operational information real time using other technologies, it becomes a very powerful combination of digital support systems, especially when you could probably harness the power of advanced predictive and prescriptive analytics. So I think that's where, in my mind, how it to your question, Kalyan, in terms of how data could probably fuel this transformation. Yeah.
Excellent.
So over to you.
Excellent, Thompson. Excellent, Thompson. Data and technology, and you gave a simple definition of the new role of a CFO, digital finance leader. Probably that may be used for an organization design as well. Thank you, Thompson, for that. Actually. So let's quickly get on to an operations perspective and find out actually how are we actually implementing these new technologies, and how are we supporting the CFO function on the ground? Is it all about just optimizing cost, or is it beyond that? Actually, I mean, let's try to get some understanding on the ground. What are the things that we're doing beyond cost and not just about optimizing cost? From Leon. Over to you, Leon.
Hey, Kalyan, thank you so much. And a very good question, actually, because one of the knee-jerk reactions that we've seen with the COVID situation and the pandemic hitting us was, immediately look at cost reduction. And, the immediate impact was, I'm carrying a team of people who are doing an X amount of volume of processing. What kind of cost reduction I can do? Of course, there has been some preemptive work in advance. I've seen in 2019 also with a lot of CFOs who are now actively engaging in the discussions of bringing in automation in certain areas. And so, companies like UiPath, Automation Anywhere, were definitely getting involved in a lot of these automation of, various processes which within the AP/AR world, and trying to streamline a lot of that. But this was more a replacement in terms of bringing in the humanoid element into the human activities for more relative straight-through processing. But as we look at it, the first, as the knee-jerk reaction hit, after the pandemic, the first knee-jerk reaction was, when we wanted to do the cost reduction was, how do I do this? Because I already have a team of X number of people. Now I need to optimize the operating cost because they have been with me for a very long time. How do I recalibrate the effectiveness, or how do I recalibrate? Because earlier it was business as usual, going through the numbers. Everybody was comfortable in the old ways of doing things. And now the pandemic's pushed everybody to a position to say, can the old ways be renewed? Can there be a better way? Maybe it can be even upend. So when coming back to Thompson's point about digital adoption, what is now becoming one of the key drivers for the CFOs. At what point of time do you want digital adoption to come in? And now what we are seeing is CFOs are driving digital adoption right at the upstream of the businesses, where they are asking for data inputs to come in more in a digital format. There's better adoption of OCR, ICR technologies, and that's where we come in as an organization. And from our shared services, we have this ecosystem that has been built up. So we've got the ability to build in apps that can be deployed at the upstream business processes, where they can capture the data automatically in a digital format. We have a strong OCR, ICR engine with a machine learning enabled, which picks up all this information. And I can tell you what we are doing in real time. And this information is then translated. And what we've seen is with machine learning, the ability to get in the information extraction, it goes very, very high when it's a digital output. And so what happens is we are now changing the work of the people, the humans, to become validation sections of validators. So the humans are becoming validators and the technology is becoming the processor. So that's how we've started changing the whole mix, where we are changing the mix of humans becoming, moving from a processor into a validator, and the technology coming in and building in the rules and automation, rules and regulations, rules and controls that is now changing them into data processing units per se. And once the validation happens, we are able to give smart business intelligence, information reporting. We are also developing a lot of data sciences. And what, as a team, we've also engaged is we have a team of data scientists, scientists who actually sit with us. We are now moving to the next level where we've actually optimized not only bringing in the businesses. Today, I can give you for a fact that we are doing over 500,000 transactions with not more than 300 people. And these are varieties of various levels of transaction, both at a global scale where we are able to consolidate unstructured data into a structured format and provide a single version of truth. Now, the next steps, what we've done is we've built in technology and process automation. But beyond that, we've brought in data sciences now to enable, to bring in that cognitive element, which Thompson had mentioned earlier, where we are bringing the cognitive element now, and now the CFOs are actually seeing a more real-time threshold management on their outstanding unbilled revenues, their daily sales outstandings. Those are strongly managed real-time views and not something which you look about a week later or about 2 weeks later as to where you are in your financial standing. So there's a stronger control over your cash flows, there's stronger control over your allocations, there's stronger control over predictions of what can happen, and also whatever decisions you're taking today, we can simulate and predict what could be the possible outcome, and basis that outcome, a decision can be taken, and the system itself, the technology itself, enables you to drive those decisions across various levels of your management. So there's a lot of things that are now coming in place. One is, of course, we are moving away, we are moving the volume game into a completely a validation game where we're bringing in the value proposition. And second is, bringing in predictive futuristic analytics to actually enable us to make better decisions from a cognitive control management. So tremendous change in the way people are thinking, where CFOs are approaching the business solutions. And this is something that we also have geared ourselves to also deliver, for most of our clients.
Superb. Superb, Leon. I think you have summarized it well, and I can put this in one simple, if I have to put it an abbreviation, as we call it as QCDPRM: quality, cost, delivery, productivity, risk, and morale. So it's not just about cost. It's all not just about error-free transactions and accurate processing. It's not just about productivity. It's also about risk-regulated environment and how this is. And the most important thing, like what Abhijit said, the timeliness. The timeliness is very important. And to achieve the timeliness, you need to have these projects and initiatives also executed on time, which is basically, that's where the rapid application deployments and other aspects are coming into picture. Actually, thank you, Leon, for that excellent.
There's one more point I wanted to bring in. Sorry, interjecting. There's one more point. Because of these adoptions and change in the way we are doing business, we are now moving on away from that old traditional model of FTE-based pricing models and delivery models to a more partnership, gain share, outcome-based, TCO-controlled mechanisms. And those are things that CFOs are coming back to us with. And this is something that we are working with them over 3 years, 36 months, 60 months to deliver those kind of deliverables.
Absolutely. I think that resonates from Abhijit and Shankar's point, basically from finance perspective and the business perspective. We have to reconfigure the shared services in every dimension. And that's very well articulated at the beginning of this session. Thank you, Leon, for that. Let's move on quickly, actually, to the next question, the follow-up question. And it's important, actually. I mean, we cannot forget at the whole journey, the value chain on the customer perspective. Now, let's understand, what does the customer think about all of these changes? What is going in his mind, actually? I mean, I know that Santosh has been meeting a number of customers across, width and breadth across the globe. So I would like to have some views from Santosh quickly on what are the pain points, what are the challenges from a customer perspective, Santosh?
Okay. So thanks, Kalyan. I think, if we have to say it's, I think pain points when I speak to the customers, I think it's possibly an understatement. They possibly call this a storm, and the storm was probably, it came as a surprise. It also came with the speed. Then also it had the intensity. I think it had all of that, and everybody, I think, as a customer, when I speak to them, they feel that, when this happened, this COVID-19 happened, they had to take a cover, obviously, to protect themselves from the storm, and then put some fixes, of course, to maintain the business continuity. But I think that there is a good sign. I think when I speak more and more to the customer, let's look at the optimistic side and a hopeful side of the perspective. There is, I think, looks like there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what it looks like. And most of the customers today are actually planning for the new normal actually that is emerging in the industry, and they are actually planning for all of it. And what are the 3 or 4 things that they're planning in terms of the new normal as the business is actually transforming? So one obviously is the growth. They have to bring back the growth into their business. I think that's one main objective that they have. And this growth, I think it can be by increasing the speed of acquisition, and also there are ways of actually looking at new ways of acquiring the customer and new business models that are actually emerging. And that's one thing I think the customers are actually definitely planning. The second thing is, as Abhijit was saying, this is about the cost, this is about the timeliness, and this is about simplicity. I think that's the second thing, and that cost factor to make the business nimble, to react, respond with speed. I think that's the second thing that the customers are actually looking at. And the third, surprisingly, if you see, I think we all have spoken about generally the customer experience. Customer experience is a big thing in the industry for the last, I think, 5 years or so that I see. But there is also another thing that's actually people are talking about. One is the partner experience, because the business continuity has to be maintained at Conneqt, and also about the employee experience, because these are the people who have actually supported the businesses during these difficult times. And the other thing that I always see is that, especially in the Indian context, when I speak to the customer, in fact, many customers actually were in some way or the other, though they say that this came as a storm, there was also a storm that was actually, I think, blowing in the market for the last 2 years. If you all know that the Indian economy was slowing, and there was a degrowth that was happening, and in some way or the other, I think most of the customers were actually preparing for that. But what has happened is that I think some kind of clarity has now emerged. This pain was actually prolonging for quite some time. The clarity has emerged. The decision making actually will become only faster, is the sense that they get, because if they don't react at this point in time, I think probably they will lose the opportunity, because crisis also provides an opportunity to actually for the businesses in the difficult times. So that, I think, is in general what I can say from the customer standpoint. Now, having said that, about this is in the macro environment, how does that actually translate into the CFO function? How does it actually translate? If you see that in the shared services context that we have, probably how does this translate into the digital transformation journey that everybody that was talking about for the last few years, but the one that has accelerated? So putting it from the first point that I was talking about, which is about bringing back the growth. So if you look at the growth perspective, I think let's look at the front office. I think customers are doing a lot of things today in the front office side, which is almost, I think, which is known to all of us, and especially we being in the CLM business, we know what the customers are doing. They're implementing technologies, they are implementing bots, they are trying to reduce the cost of acquisition of the customers, and all of that. They are actually deploying part-time workers, they are also deploying gig workers, and we are engaged with these customers on the lot of fronts on the customer lifecycle management. Actually, they are reimagining the way that the customers can be acquired today. But now, does that stop there? And how does it actually, impact the CFO function, or also the adjacent functions that you have? And generally in the shared services industry, Kalyan, we talked about generally this is order to cash, which is more like a marketing jargon that we all have used in the shared service industry. But let's break that up once the customer is required for that to translate into a cash for a CFO function, whether it is actually onboarding process, whether it is a fulfillment process, whether it is an order processing process, and whether that is invoicing process, which is a core in the shared services today. And that has to actually, be done with speed, and which can actually further reduce the cost of acquisition, which can actually reduce the cost of service and all of that. And today, most of the CFOs are actually, it's not that it has not been done in the past. There are new technologies which have emerged, AI, ML, and NLP-based technologies. And most of these processes that we talked about today are actually highly amenable to these technologies which is available in the market. And service providers like have effectively used that. And quite a few of the CFOs are actually today are engaged with us, talking to some of these technologies for deployment in their own shared services at times, or maybe transforming the shared services for them to actually bring that speed. I think that's primarily from the growth perspective that I can see is that what the CFOs are actually thinking in terms of the direction that they want to take in order to increase the speed to actually order to cash and stuff like that. Now, secondly, I think let me go to the concept, go to cost, which actually Abhijit actually talked about it a lot. It is not anything new. The CFOs themselves have been very innovative in that area. As you know, wave one, wave two, at decades of shared services, centralization has been done, optimization has been done, standardization has been done, and all of that has happened. But the technology that has invested, unfortunately, has to an extent become a legacy today, and that is also what Abhijit was actually alluding to, whether it is simplicity or the ease of access. The cost of the people has actually gone up. The cost of infrastructure has gone up. And now if they are looking at actually reducing the cost of technology, it's not going to be incremental in these difficult times. It's going to be quantum jump that they are actually wanting to make. And some of these conversations are actually happening with us in terms of as to how we can actually transform their actually existing shared services into a new age shared services to the same thing that they've been actually doing. Many of these, whether it is procure to pay, which is actually it is order to cash and all of that. So the value proposition from some of the shared service providers like ourselves today is what? And today we can bring in new technology, the replacement cost of the technology, we're going to absorb that. It's going to come more in the form of an OPEX and not in the form of a CAPEX. And then we also say, well, unlike a system integrator, probably we can today provide an outcome-based services. And it is not just about implementing a technology, that can also be provided as a transaction-based services. And this is how we can actually transform the existing shared services into the next level, and then make their businesses nimble, make their businesses respond to the requirements with speed. I think that's the second aspect in terms of the cost that I can speak about. Now let me also go to the other, so the last point, Kalyan?
Sure, go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay. And because there are three things that I talked about. One is the growth, the second is the cost, and the third is, I think, the customer experience, and which is now translating into employee experience and the partner experience. And these are the people actually who help them in the continuity of the business. And we see that the CFOs today, I see actually a lot of RFPs today coming back in the market, especially on the accounts payable side and also on the T&D payable side. And I feel that, and the main objectives that are defined in this RFPs is that to increase the turnaround time of the accounts payable, improve partner experience, improve query resolution, decrease disputes. And these are some of the objectives that they are actually defining upfront in the RFPs that are actually getting released in the market. So which essentially shows that there is a lot of effort that's going in actually to increase the employee experience and the partner experience for continuity of the business, which has to actually thrive in the emerging market. I think these are the 3 or 4 things that I think that I'm actually getting to hear from the CFOs in the shared service context. Thanks so much.
Superb. Thank you, Santosh, for that perspective. It's good that you brought in the customer experience perspective. You call it effectiveness and efficiency. Efficiency is business results and effectiveness is customer results. So we don't want to compromise one for the other. Jokingly, we call it as operation success, patient dead. So we don't want that kind of a situation. So thank you for that, Santosh. Let's move on to next quickly. Quickly, I would like to hear from Thompson. A couple of more questions are there, but I just want to make it very short and brief, if you don't mind. I know that a lot of things to discuss, and I also want to give some time for audience to, provide some, their thoughts and questions. So, Thompson, so on this point on, we've seen technology, how it's been delivering value pre-COVID. Now, what are the new trends nowadays? Actually, we've seen the emergence of human to humanoids from a standalone RPA, robotic process automation, to a intelligent robotic process automation aided with all the cognitive AI, ML, everything. So I just want to hear from you quickly, a short and a crisp one, in terms of how it is going to add value to the SSCs, and how is it going to, create that value, especially in the context of this pandemic and the new normal. Yeah.
Yeah, Kalyan. So maybe most of it, I think, all our colleagues spoke about it. I would say, just to summarize, if you ask me, I would call it a shared services digital transformation toolkit. What is in this toolkit? If you ask me, it's fundamentally, it is intelligent technology orchestration. Can I very quickly orchestrate technology? I don't have long cycle time. I don't have long delivery period. So I need to kind of quickly do that. That's point number one. Then can I use NLP, NLG, computer vision powered, data extractors and all this good stuff, because we deal with a lot of documentation. That's the second point, right? And how do I increase the quality of that? The third is, you touched upon it, Kalyan, which you spoke about rapid application deployment. That's the new buzzword, but in simple English, it's low code, no code. Fundamentally, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so low code, no code, and which is probably building on the foundations of operations excellence and operations automation. Can we quickly create new workflows? Can we quickly automate processes? Things like that. So that's the second one. How do we quickly do that? The fourth part is, how do we train the bots? Now how do we train these bots? How do we kind of help these bots mature from a self-learning, from a machine learning perspective? The fifth is, it's all end-to-end processes. The entire shared services is moving towards end-to-end processes with digital insight. So digital is going to be an inside component which helps you manage these processes more effectively and drive efficiency. And last but not least, I think all of us spoke about it. One is, how do I real-time monitor, drive compliance, and manage exception management, right? That's a very, very important part of it. The other very important question you also touched upon is the human-humanoid coexistence, because on that, if I touch upon for a single minute on that is, it's a new normal, new reality, how humans and humanoids can coexist, how digital workforce and human workforce can coexist. The key learnings I have taken away from, for the last 20 years, we learned so much on Toyota production systems. A firm believer of industrial engineering, such as yourself, Kalyan, has helped us, services industry adopt that. I think the key takeaway is what Judoka teaches us is automation with the human touch. So maybe we'll have to probably examine Toyota production systems in a modern day environment and try and see how humans and human beings can coexist, and how a seamless production system works beautifully, just like in a Toyota production system. And it's self-managed, self-correcting, high quality, and every time the end-to-end process is absolutely error-free. I think that's where we are, moving. It's a kind of a journey which will mature, where humans will learn to coexist with human beings, and that's and maybe I'll just close with one quote, because it's a very interesting quote, and will also be helpful for a lot of our colleagues from the finance functions. I would quote John Marino, Chief Accounting Officer of FedEx. It might be very interesting for people. So, open quote, he says, "For me, robotic process automation, analytics, advanced analytics, machine learning are three legs of the same stool." It's a very powerful statement. The combination of those technologies and the ability to deliver them in an agile manner without long lead times, extensive interface complexities, creates a tremendous opportunity to capitalize on some real big efficiency gains in virtually every staff function. The big win for us is to liberate that time and move up the finance value chain that it delivers better value for the organization. Close quotes. Thanks, Kalyan.
Excellent.
Now over
Excellent.
to you.
Thanks, Thompson, for that insight on the new technologies and trends. I think we are running short of little time, so I want you guys to keep it brief in terms of certain specific points. Key takeaways are very critical. So that's what we're looking at. So the next question is, to Leon, actually, in terms of how are we managing on the ground the dilemma between work from home to work from office, and now the unlock situation. How is it being dealt on the ground within the SSC, Leon?
So, Kalyan, that's a good question. To be very honest, technology has been a big enabler for us. Today, more than 99% of our people are actually working from home, working on multiple shifts. We are being able to track their performance. We are being able to make sure that everybody logs in at a particular time. The deliveries are happening on time. We are able to real-time monitor how many people are processing, and so on and so forth. Of course, this is the enablement of technology, whether you call it as simple as having a workflow in place, making sure that everything is on the cloud. We are able to extract information and know everything. The single point of failure, of course, till now is just the broadband connectivity question, and that is the only single point of failure that we are seeing as of today. For that, what we've done is not only have we provided laptops to our people where they can log in remotely into our servers directly, get access through cloud, through VPN, but also what we've done is in a lot of our work from home strategy, we are actually providing a laptop with 4G enablement. And so should there be a drop in broadband connectivity, we are able to reconnect back through using 4G. So those are one of the key things. One of the key takeaways that we've seen is there hasn't been, of course, there has been a little bit of an adoption and getting used to the system, but over the last 3 months, the adoption has been very high. And what we are seeing is now the productivity numbers actually coming back more or less back to normal. And we are seeing a lot more acceptance of how we can work remotely. So supervisors are getting on these kind of conference calls, Microsoft Teams, but even our platforms have technology enablement for instant IM messaging. So those are interactions that are happening, and so right now I think we are back to more or less a normal state in terms of production capacity and control.
Excellent, Leon.
And there's no compromise on quality, by the way.
Absolutely, that's a given thing. Actually, we cannot afford to. Thank you, Leon, for that perspective. So quickly, there are two questions. One major question, and then a follow-up question. So first to Abhijit, and then probably I would like Shankar to quickly respond. Just give me, top of your mind, Abhijit, just one or two things that would be bothering a CFO today nowadays, actually, especially during this pandemic and now post the COVID situation.
I think you started by talking about the resilience of the company being tested. I think that is really the heart of the issue, because and let me explain in a minute what I mean. I think a CFO's main role is actually to plan the entire business and do financial planning, which is based on a certain set of assumptions, both on cost and revenue, and there are of course sensitivities built in, and there are various scenarios built in, but those scenarios get tested in times like this. So the resilience of the company gets tested, and that in turn has impact on the funding, on cash flows, on liquidity, on what and how much cash will come in and how much will go out, on what will be the future planning, what was at one point looking like adequate capacity might suddenly look like too much capacity. In certain other aspects, what might have been more of excess might suddenly look at being a shortcoming. So I think these are the ways, so the variability of everything, or of earnings is one final impact of that, but the variability in earnings, in cash flows, in income streams, in liquidity is really what would keep the CFO awake at night, because primarily it is the CFO's responsibility to restore the financial plan very quickly and to restore the liquidity within the company. And I think that would keep him awake at night in times like this.
Thank you, Abhijit. Excellent in-depth insight into especially what the CFO goes through today. A quick follow-up question, and then I will leave it to the audience to have any questions. So Shankar, if I were to ask you, I mean, tell me one or two things that a CFO would be probably from your perspective doing differently as CFO as an individual, not from a digital or any other perspective. CFO as an individual, what would you think a CFO might be looking at doing differently in these times?
Sure. I mean, I look at CFOs as leaders. I would imagine that as a leader, you wouldn't waste a crisis, though the crisis has been very exacting in terms of its human toll. But a crisis is never wasted. So I would actually look at, for example, how is it that I can make my organization future ready? And when I say organization, I'm not talking only of finance as a function. I'm saying the entire organization future ready, because you really don't know what's the next crisis all about. I mean, is there a next pandemic? Is there an earthquake? Any other Himalayan disaster? It could be a whatever weather disruption. So I would imagine that the way a CFO will now look at running his organization, his or her organization, would be, can I get in some innovative methods to drive the function and the organization? So maybe gaming scenarios. What if a major customer doesn't pay up and goes bankrupt? Okay, do we have an immediate 24-hour response to that? So I think these are the ways possibly CFOs will start reimagining their role and reimagining the way they will future-proof their organization. I would imagine that this will be one key takeaway for me.
Thank you, Shankar. So I think we're running out of time. Thanks, Shankar. Thanks, everybody. So let's quickly open the forum for some questions from the audience, if any. Please type in your question quickly in a short form, whichever, and then we'll try to get some answers from the panelists. Now, here is a question for Leon. The question is actually, what are some of the business and process efficiency methodologies which are practiced now currently, which will deliver the desired result for your customer, especially on the ground? Yeah, Leon.
So what we've done is we have a special business process excellence team that actually goes on the ground and tries to identify exactly what are the KPIs, various maturity models thereof. We are trying to understand where our team goes and understands the various maturity models of the various KPIs being processed. We kind of evaluate where they are at that point of time, where they need to be. So we create a matrix around where they are and where they need to be, and we then create various models against ECRA, which is for one of the models that we're using to actually track lean methodology is another one where we're using opportunities from a business process excellence perspective to streamline and address each and every line item. And one of the things that we've been able to do is also a common sense approach, to be very honest. A common sense approach beats a lot of the traditional models where we are actually understanding each and every business process rules that are specific to that business industry, and we're trying to bring in some automation where we can bring in a straight through processing. So some of the methodologies are actually moving to a more way of saying that how much of dependency of humans can be removed and bring in the methodology of using technology as a platform. So a lot of the streamlining and process steps have been now triggered out from an agile mechanism perspective.
Okay, quick one more thing, Leon, for you. What are the new operating models that you're doing as a part of your SSC transformation for your clients? What are the new operating models?
So there are 3 or 4 approaches that we are doing for our clients, and let me take you through high level 4 of them and the various some of the business levers that we are activating quickly to make these this impact happen. Actually, just give me a minute. So one of the big things that the clients are coming back to us and we are actually giving them is, one is a complete end-to-end greenfield build, operate and transform mechanism. So where we go, build the entire process again from scratch, go recruit people, train them, operate it, and put in all the technology and interventions that are required to transform and create that journey where we completely do a center of excellence, self-managed model with an outcome-based strategy. The second strategy that we use is a lift, shift, and transform, where we are taking over existing resources, bring them into our premises, where we put in our new structured policies. So we look at the as-is and the to-be policy processes, and then we kind of structure a roadmap around it. And whatever IT infra and technology that needs to be put into place to deliver the required time, required commitments to our business, we are using that. The third is, of course, rebadge, lift, shift, and transform, where we are rebadging the entire team first, and we are operating as is to get a better hold of the business. So this way, there is no drop of knowledge transfer between the cracks. Of course, none of them. We are pretty much well structured to make sure that the drop in knowledge transfer is very less. But rebadge is one of the stronger ways. But then what happens is when we do the rebadge, shift, and transform, the efficiency matrix actually starts, an efficiency build-up story comes a little later as we rebadge people and retransform, and we use various levers to make changes within the businesses. One is rationalization of the salaries, rationalization of the skill sets to make sure that the right people are deployed for the right processes, and then we look at what kind of technologies can be put in at that particular point, whether it's point automation or whether we need a holistic change in the ecosystem, right from an end-to-end workflow perspective, and synchronization between different platforms and technologies, because an organization may be using 2-3 platforms, one for expense management, one for record keeping, and both of these platforms may not be talking to each other. So we could bring in technology to synchronize both these platforms. And the third is where we actually keep the process as is, we insource. That means we take our people and we deploy them at client premises and manage the operations out of client premises. So that way, even the client has a perspective of what is getting delivered right in front of his eyes. So there are multiple. These are the 4 broad models that we generally tend to operate from a shared services transformation journey perspective. And then we create a whole maturity journey model where we are looking at where they stand in the maturity model. So where they have moderate centralization, maybe moderate use of technology, moderate standardization, then we try to move them to a more higher technology enabled practices, try to bring in best practices from the market. We look at also ways of seeing if the location strategy is efficient. So should we deliver it out of a particular location as a combined and centralize all the operations, and then see how much of the point automation or third-party platforms that we can. And of course, the final stage, which is the fully mature stage, is where you're looking at completely ecosystem that is completely RPA enabled, AI and ML capabilities built into it. There is data sciences for the cognitive flavor. The delivery models between processes could be different. Some could be transaction based and some could be outcome based. So unbilled billing revenue, we also take a lot of responsibility on following up for unbilled revenues. We also take for outstandings, and we also do collection and dunning, the first level dunning from our side to customers. That is another step that we do for revenue realization. So that is also there, and we do that based on various outcome-based models. We've also enabled some platforms and technologies to do a lot of self-service, especially for reporting as a service or analytics as a service. So there's a lot of self-service capabilities built into it. And of course, we can work on other business models, which could include, looking at a total cost and giving that cost to us, and then we work out a journey, and we can work on a gain share model also.
Excellent. Thank you, Leon, for those insights, especially from the ground and actually from an operations perspective, how you're managing this. Thank you, Leon. I think we passed the time by a couple of minutes, and I want to thank all the panelists here. I mean, we got an excellent view. I wish I had more time to discuss more on these things, but definitely we would try to get one more session probably later, actually, when it's possible, actually. And I thank all the panelists for that wonderful insights, and thanks to all the audience for the participation, and stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.